This is Thriveonomics, presented by Thrive Mortgage. Hey, welcome back to another episode of Thriveonomics. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. We're so glad you came. And for those of you audiophiles out there, I think that this interview is really going to be up your alley, especially if you have any proficiency with any musical instrument whatsoever, or have ever taken musical lessons, or have ever even looked at a musical instrument at some point in your life. I think you're going to get a lot out of this interview. We've got a very, very special guest on. Before we get to our guest, as always, joining me in our Dallas studio, hello, I was about to say Thriveonomics again, but you're Raul Espinoza, podcast producer extraordinaire. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing great. Again, very excited about today's guest. So it's right up my alley, music.
This is definitely right up your alley.
Yeah. Fun fact. I used to play music my whole life up until recently. I mean, I guess I still kind of do. I still know what I'm doing, but I just don't actively play as much as I used to. So this is actually a lot of fun.
What instruments do you play? Remind us.
So I did drums. I started out playing drums, and then I play, and then I played guitar, and then also bass and a little bit of keyboard.
So you could literally be your own rhythm section.
Yeah, I mean, me and my brother used to play in a band, and we basically did we used to record every instrument and everything. So nice. And then we would just hire musicians to play with us live.
To fill in. Mm-hmm. Did you do covers, or did y'all do your own stuff?
No, it's weird. We never really did covers. Like, we always did original stuff. And that's why, I guess we'll get into it later, but that's why I always felt kind of limited with why my style is, because I could only play the music that we would write. Like, if you told me, hey, play jazz, I have no idea what I'm doing. Or you play like, whatever, blues, can't do it. But just like I only play like the style that we do. Oh, and then also I only play, because the music I actually started out playing was Mexican music, traditional Mexican music with my dad. Because I get that from my dad. My dad he was an accordion player, and he sang, and he played the guitar and bass. So he used to do his own stuff too. So I kind of got that from him. But anyways, going on too long, but yeah. That's just a fun.
Yeah, I was about to say, we do have a guest that we need to actually interview since we invited her on. Well, let's go ahead and bring her in. The guest we have today is Allison Wilkinson. She is the founder of I Am School of Music, has been a long time musical instructor in her own right. And Allison, welcome to Thriveonomics.
Thank you. It is such an honor to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you. And I had the pleasure of actually meeting and chatting with you last week, and kind of getting to know you, your background, and the story of I Am the School of Music and what that's all about. So we'll get into that in a little bit, but let's why don't you share with our listeners a little bit about your background in music, and when did this journey all start for you?
Well, actually, I want to pop in here. So Raul, my family, we lived in Coahuila for a year and a half. So those nice. That music, that boom chuck chuck boom chuck chuck.
Oh
boom,
yeah.
Chuck, chuck. Yeah.
It's in my head because my dad made me play that since I was a little kid.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't play the trumpet.
Yeah, no. My sister does, but I never did.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anyway, I connected with that. Okay, so cool. The question. Remember the question.
Yeah, we're all about the tangents on this podcast. So if a conversation gets derailed, not a problem. We can always find a way to segue back. But the initial question was, where did this journey begin for you? Like, when did you start playing a musical instrument? What did you focus on? What did you love about it? All that good stuff.
I always loved sound. So when I was a kid, there's a theory going around in the family that I'm an undiagnosed high functioning autistic, because I could feel sound in my body. I just loved it. And my mom was a piano teacher, and she was involved in church choirs and running church choirs, and she was kind of big here in the Portland area church scene from in the 80s and 90s. So I was actually my mom went into labor with me at a choir concert and had to wait and pull back.
That's how it started.
Yeah, that's
Wait,
where
the choir concert had to wait, or you had to wait?
No, I had to wait.
You had to wait. Okay.
Yeah, he's like, "This is fine. I need to finish this."
We got to sing.
Yeah,
Well,
we
that's
got
it.
she was playing piano. She's like, "I can't leave, otherwise this will be real weird." So, she put me in lessons with her teacher when I was 7. And so this teacher, she was 87 when I started, and
Yeah.
I think
Tell us. You did share with me the last time we spoke. You shared with me a little bit of your instructor's background story. Where did she tell us again? Where did she come from? Because I
so
thought that was fascinating.
yeah, so so it's 1993 when I started taking lessons.
Uh-huh.
This woman, I can't remember quite how old she was. I know that she was 5 years old when she came over from England on the ship.
On.
Yeah, on the ship that saved the survivors from the Titanic. So she was
Yep.
on the Mauritania. And I
That's
remember,
amazing.
right? It's just wild. I remember I would walk in and she was always gorgeous. I mean, something, but this pure white hair that was always curled. She kind of looked like, that cartoon Maxine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So she had like curled up hair like that and always had a big flower and big red lipstick. I think everybody remembers how they're made to feel in their music lessons. That you don't forget that feeling that you get.
Right.
Yeah. And she was kind, but she's also kind of, her main method of motivation seemed to be, yeah, and it's so hard because people become so attached to their teachers. They don't want to say anything bad about it. But she had this system where if you practiced, you got a gold star on the wall.
Okay.
If you didn't practice, or she thought that your practice wasn't good enough, she took a big black crayon and she marked a big black star on your chart for everybody to see. So it was this, if you do a good job, you get rewarded. But if you do a bad job, it's everyone's gonna know about it.
Kind of a merit-based system.
Yeah.
Rewarding.
Yeah, which would have been great, which would have been fine. I guess, there was always this feeling of a little bit like, well, what if I don't know what to do? What if in the middle of the week, I just don't know how to practice? What if I come to you and something happened during the week?
Right.
I think that my experience was pretty typical. That's kind of how music lessons went for a long, long time for everybody.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So what instruments did you grow up playing?
I did piano. Actually, I've done piano since I was 7. I've been a piano player. I started flute in band because I was very, very tall, and I thought if I played flute, it would make me seem smaller. So
it's such a delicate instrument. I mean,
yeah, it is. So I thought maybe I could fool people, but I fell in love with it and
I would think with such a small, delicate instrument that would accentuate your size, and it would actually have the opposite effect, and you'd look like, why is that girl playing a small stick?
Don't try to use logic on a 12-year-old girl, James.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, there's no such thing.
So let's segue now into your adult life. What was it about music that led you to become a musical instructor?
Well, actually, that's kind of an interesting story. I've always loved being with people, and seeing them through their processes. And when I got to college, I remember there was just this low level, like it felt to me anyway, that there was this low level kind of disdain for people who taught privately. Like, even I remember the first day we went in, the director of the program was like, you can get your bachelor's degree and hang out your shingle and do that, or you could go forward and be an academic or lead these things. And so my original plan was to be an ethnomusicologist.
Define that.
Yeah.
I have no idea what that means.
Yeah.
So a musicologist is somebody who studies the theory, history, and essences of music.
Okay.
And an ethnomusicologist is somebody who does that in a non-Western context. So my plan was to like put on my hiking boots and hike through Chile and study Chilean flutes. And I got sidetracked from that and ended up coming home and started working at a Montessori school. And started taking on some private students just for the reason most musicians take on private students. I needed a side income.
Sure.
And then I realized, wait, this is what I'm built to do. This is what I should be doing. Yeah. So I started using my ethno knowledge about what music does for all cultures. Like, for example, do you know the bump, bump, ba-dum, bump? Or no, sorry, not that one. Not that one. Yeah, right.
Having a haircut, 2 bits.
The neener, 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 that little sound.
Yeah.
That is universal. Every culture
really?
around the world goes da 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 da. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you ever discover like or develop a theory as to why that is? What is it about that progression of notes that makes it so universal?
Oh yeah, I got theories. Yeah, boy, that's a big question, James. Maybe we can,
I know it's kind of deep. It's deeper than we typically go here on Thrivenomics, but
but let's go back to the teaching thing. Oh, do you have something you want to say, Raul?
No, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's probably like another podcast right there.
It might be
its own topic.
Yeah. But so anyway, what happened is I started teaching, fell in love with it. And just because of the way I was with students and how in love I was with teaching, and being with people and helping them work through their processes, I got big really fast. I think that when I only had one baby, I had 65 students at one time.
Wow.
Which is a lot
to take on.
It is. And I've got 4 kids now, so I've only got 27 active students at the moment.
Gotcha.
Or active private students, I should say.
Sure.
But the more I spent time with kids, the more I realized that what I had learned about music ed in college had really not served me well enough. Because they taught me, okay, so here's a good way to progress through these concepts, but they didn't teach me what to do when a kid walked in and looked at me and said, my parents are getting divorced. Or what to do when inevitably a 13-year-old flute player walks in my room and opens her, puts it together, acting like everything's fine. And I go, oh, what's wrong? And almost always, my mom doesn't understand me. You know? What do you do in the middle of that?
Yeah, sounds like you kind of have to get your psychology degree like on the fly in the midst of that.
At the very least, I mean, we are not counselors, but at the very least, you have to be able to know how to be with someone well in the middle of that.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this last time, James, but what that led me to was really figuring out why empathy worked, why my students were doing better. And what I came to understand through a ton of study was that basically with music, there are 3 parts of the brain that are really important. There's this forebrain that is language and thinking and rationalizing. And honestly, I'd say that our society for the last few hundred years has been kind of a snob about this front brain, because it's like, well, why don't you just think it through? Why can't you be rational? But this part of the brain is kind of clunky and slow compared to this midbrain section that everybody has, that has, people would call it a visceral reaction, which just means like a feeling in your guts, or big feelings. And that is where we really make, like psychologists will say, that's where we really make decisions. And it's also that part of your brain is set up to tell you this is a good thing or this is a bad thing. So if you're teaching a lesson and a kid is having that part of their brain activated to say, this is bad, I don't like this, then they will associate playing music with negativity.
Sure.
And then also, when that part of your brain is activated for any reason, maybe you're just not liking the lesson because you're bored or frustrated, or maybe you walked in with it inflamed for some reason, like the divorce, or just, you know, something like my cat just scratched me, you know, it could be anything. Or, you know, if you're an adult, if you're walking in with the weight of the world on your shoulders because you're an adult, that if that part of your brain is activated, your forebrain is useless. It turns off.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of an interesting segue, getting into how you developed your style of musical instructions, because you don't focus on just the literal like, okay, go play your scales 100 times until you can do it with your eyes closed, or whatever traditional methodology that people might associate with the lessons they grew up taking. Instead, you focus more on that midbrain, or that kind of emotional connection, making that an emotional connection and tying that to playing an instrument, or just making sound, as we talked about earlier. So, what was that transition like for you?
I don't know that I ever taught in that traditional way.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is because I was in a Montessori school, and they're very that their whole thing is follow
Right.
the child.
Right.
So I don't know that it was a transition, but I do know that when I was learning more about the brain,
Mm-hmm.
it gave me an opportunity to really dive deeper into ways to make it better. So let me just paint a picture for you. Let's talk about, okay, there's a 7-year-old boy coming in for lessons, and then maybe like a 45-year-old woman coming in for lessons. So that 7-year-old boy, he could have a million things going on when he walks in. He could have, let's say he's really outgoing and bouncing off the walls. That is not infrequent with 7-year-old boys.
Of course.
So he's not walking in with any anxiety, but he needs some focus. So there's a couple ways I can work with that. The first way, which would be the negative way, would be to, you know, have mom help wrangle and, hey, Braden, you need to sit down and you need to focus.
Yeah.
So now he's getting yelled at, which, you know, feels good for precisely nobody. I don't like being yelled at.
Nope.
And maybe then he sits down and maybe he's bouncing, and then maybe if I was doing it the wrong way, I'd say, okay, you need to get your body still. And that's frustrating. So now he feels yelled at and he's frustrated. So that midbrain is just activated. And then maybe he learns something and maybe he likes it. And then but he's still bouncing. Whether his body is bouncing or not, his brain is bouncing. So then he goes home and then oh, what was I supposed to do? And his mom's like, well, you should know. And he doesn't. So now we've got being yelled at, frustration, and shame all being associated with music. So let's rewind that tape. So the boy walks in and he's bouncing. I look at that kid and I think to myself, fantastic. We need more musicians that can have that sort of energy behind their music. That you have something really special going on for you. So I bounce with him for a little bit. I take him, I remember one time with a kid, he was just like, he was sitting down, he was standing up, he was moving around. So I said, you know, and this is the first time I'm meeting him, I'm like, do you know my name? Because a lot of times their moms just bring them in and they don't, you know, they're like, I don't know you. I'm like, I'm the piano teacher, but first I'm the running teacher. So we're going to get out of here. And I say, do you want to hold my hand? And he grabs onto my hand and we'll go run around my car 3 times. Just because let's go get some things out. And then I bring
Yeah.
him back and I say, okay, I want you to sit on the bench. And so he sits on the bench. And I said, now stand up, run around the bench. Okay, now sit down on the bench. And we're just training him to not feel shame for his energy, because he's gonna need it.
Right.
Yep.
So then I'll say, okay, come here. And I'll get really close. And then he's intrigued. He wants to know. I say, okay, listen. On this piano, there are black keys and there's white keys. And he'll probably go, I know. And I'm like, oh yeah. How did you know? And he's like, because I'm smart. This actually is probably more of a 5 or a 6-year-old than a 7-year-old.
Sure.
But they say, okay, I want you to go, here's your job. I want you to go play with your fingers like this. Can you do this? And he does it. Okay, I want you to go play every single set of 2 black keys on the piano. And if you make a mistake, the piano will explode. And so what I've done is I've taken all that energy, he's got all this energy. If I said, go play all the 2 black keys, he's going to be not that focused.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But now the piano's going to explode. So he's got to focus.
Have you ever had a kid that, what actually just came into my mind is the Looney Tune cartoons where Yosemite Sam has the dynamite rigged to one specific key on the piano that Bugs Bunny is supposed to play. And he keeps missing that key. And then when Yosemite Sam comes over and says, no, you do it like this, and it hits the right key, then the piano actually did explode. So that kind of triggered a very fond memory in my mind. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. I'm going to go ahead and steal that.
Yeah, you should.
Use it for my next student. I'll show him Yosemite's like, be careful.
Yeah.
Look,
This
it can
will happen.
Yeah.
This will happen. Well, how does that, okay, so that's the approach with kids. Obviously, the kids, you got to figure them out. You got to figure out how they receive messages, how they are best communicated with, given all different personality types. How does that segue over to your work with adults? Is it any different, or do you still kind of have to go through the same process of figuring out the best way to communicate with them?
No, you absolutely have to. You have to figure out how to talk to an adult. So adults are very interesting because somebody somewhere told adults that it's harder to learn a music instrument when you're grown up, which is that's nonsense. That is
Good to know.
Yeah, you're welcome. That is total BS, because you've had a lifetime of learning things. Like kids have to start even learning how to learn. Adults know how to learn things. The difference between kids and adults always is that kids are less afraid to make mistakes. They have less experiences with the consequences of making mistakes, whereas adults, depending on how healthy they are emotionally, have some sort of baggage with the idea of making mistakes. So if I have a really healthy adult, I remember one time I had a school director, and she was a school director and a psychologist, and she came in and she learned piano, and it was a breeze because she was totally comfortable with the idea of making a mistake in front of me. She'd make a mistake and she'd just laugh and she'd go, that's funny. But I've had other people low key have breakdowns, like grown-ups, adults have breakdowns and be like, I am so sorry. I promise I practiced. There's this tension in themselves that doesn't exist with me. And
something self-imposed.
Yeah, that it's very deep. And I mean, if you think about all the opportunities that people have in their lives to get that message, it's really not surprising that would be the case.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I learned guitar because I grew up playing drums, and I learned guitar when I was in my 20s, like mid 20s, I think, is when I started learning. And yeah, I think I mean, I felt pretty good about it, like maybe a couple years in. I think, but yeah, I learned pretty late in life too. And I also thought I guess, heard that myth that it's very hard to learn when you're older. And so actually when I first started, I thought maybe it was too late. But back then, you know, I just had a lot of time on my hands and I would just practice all day. And then, you know, because my band was already playing, so it was easy to just kind of practice a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I learned when I was a lot older.
Yeah.
So Raul, how would it have felt? Because you said earlier that you were self-taught, right?
Yeah.
So how would you have felt if you had lessons on guitar? How do you think you would have felt going into a lesson with somebody?
To be honest, I was always really scared because of all the notes. Like I was never really good in school, and so like because of that, I was always very scared to learn. And so even till this day, like my daughter, she plays music now, and she'll show me some of her music, and I'm like, man, I don't. That's really cool that you know how to do that. I have no idea what that is. And it's always like really fascinating, and I've always wanted to go back and learn the proper way, because I really don't know what I'm doing. And so I thought it was really funny because when I moved to Los Angeles to play music, and it was really funny because me and my brother wrote a lot of the music, and so we got to a point where we didn't know anybody there, so we had to like pay people to play our music live. And so it was really funny because we paid this drummer. And he showed up to practice, and he had like a little notebook, and all of our music was written out. And it was the weirdest thing because we had never played with him before, and he was just like playing drums and keeping up with us, and he was just reading, and then it was just the craziest thing. And afterwards, I just remember being like, "Hey, can I see that? Because that's so weird to me." And to see everything that like we had written out, it was like just the coolest thing. I think I actually saved it because I was like, man, that's so cool. Because I mean, I have no idea how any of that works. I really don't. I'd have no idea how that works when people write out music.
Yeah. One of the things that I hear really frequently with adult students is that they have a ton of anxiety about reading music. Because I mean, learning.
I don't read.
Right.
At all,
I
ever.
do not like reading.
It's like I just don't anyway. But music is interesting. I always tell adults when they come in, they'll be like, "Okay, now listen, I don't know how to read," and I'm like, "Okay, like we're gonna make it." And then I say, just so you know, it's gonna be a lot easier than you think.
Yeah.
And they always kind of look at me like, "Sure, yeah, right." And I asked them how they were at math. Like, were you any good at algebra? Were you any good at geometry? Because actually music, so you have to imagine a staff, which is actually based on the human hand. I don't know if you knew that, but the first person who wrote music wrote it based on the human hand like this. Do, re, mi, fa. So there's 5 lines because of our hands.
Oh.
And I say, if notes are written like this, have you ever seen notes where they're stacked up on top of each other?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that process is in the brain like algebra.
Okay.
And if notes are happening one after another, kind of like how a singer would do it, da 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 da, that process is in your brain like geometry. And so people who can even get a basic grasp on, or have had adults who have had any basic grasp on those, they look at music and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, I know this. It's like something they know that they didn't know that they knew.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it does not have to be hard. It can be made to be hard, but it doesn't have to be at all.
Yeah. I mean, I'm definitely fascinated by it. Like, I love to see it, especially when it's something that like, you know, I wrote. It's just so crazy to me to see that because I have no idea how any of that works. And so it's just really fascinating.
So actually, Raul, can I say something to that?
Yeah.
So I do this whole class on music in the brain. And one of the things that's most interesting is if you do enough study on the evolution of humans, what you find is that music probably existed before language. In fact, Darwin talks about that. So the fact that you are creating music in your mind that you can't express with your forebrain is Of course, because the more basic parts of your brain are expressing something.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's awesome. It probably would be cool to see something that is in your deep consciousness be like visual. That's crazy.
Yeah, it is really crazy. And also, I know I'm going to sound kind of crazy, but when we would write music, a lot of times when I was up late trying to think, a lot of times I see weird shapes in my head, like while I'm writing music and while I'm trying to figure stuff, and I'm just like rhythms, and they somehow connect in my brain. And so it's just really funny to see how it's written out compared to like the way I see it. And it's just very different. And so I don't know what it is in like our heads that do that. But for me, I see a lot of shapes and stuff like that, like whenever I'm writing, because I think because my brain doesn't know, I guess it's trying to figure out how to like get it out. And so it's just very interesting. Like I really am fascinated by that. It's really cool.
It sounds to me like you have a ton of, it sounds like I'm trying to sell you. I'm not, I'm just interested in you. But it sounds like you have a ton of innate musical intelligence that just has been, that hasn't had the chance to really run as in terms of like formal education.
Yeah. So my daughter's like, Dad, how do you do this? I'm like, I don't know. Like, you just do it. I have no idea. You just do it. And then it's funny because I'll tell her like parts, and this is what we used to do in practice too. Like me and my brother were the same. Like we were both self-taught. It wasn't like, hey, play this part. It'd be like, play this part, like, like we have to like sing it because I have no idea how to tell somebody else how to do something. Well, before we recorded it, Right. And so it's pretty funny.
The greatest thing about musicians like you, when they get into formal lessons, if they get the courage to get into formal lessons, the greatest thing is that music teachers very quickly work themselves out of a job because within a year they have everything that they need. They're just done. It doesn't take it. There's this perception that music reading in particular and actually learning the mechanics of music is just incredibly difficult, and it's just not. Yeah, and that's part of the reason I started I Am School is because I'm kind of I just want people to have. I want kids to be built up to understand that they can tackle anything that they want to in music, that there's nothing like when I hear you talk, Raul, it sort of feels like you're like, I missed my chance. I so wish I had. And I want kids to be like, no, there's nothing I can't tackle, which is how my students are, my private students are. And I want adults to not look at it as this terrifying thing because it really, everyone knows more than they think they do, and it's so much more accessible than people think it is. So I want that message spread, and I want to give teachers the resources to make that a reality.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, you coming on here on the show, is helping out. I mean, spread that message. So we're gonna put this all over the place, as much as we can. So.
Well, let's take, based on what Allison was just talking about, let's take that as an opportunity to kind of segue into I Am School of Music and how that got going. So obviously most people associate musical instruction with face-to-face, one-on-one, or one-on small group of individuals for those hands-on lessons. Obviously, with the whole COVID-19 environment that we find ourselves in, that really puts a pretty big damper on your ability to have that face-to-face instruction with students. So what was it that you discovered that was like the aha moment for you in terms of how you could transition that or just kind of pivot into an alternative way of providing that instruction to your students?
I'm actually immunocompromised. So when this whole thing went down, all my students went virtual. And probably by now, if you've been listening, you kind of get that I wasn't gonna settle for for low level music teaching. I still wanted to take care of kids' emotions. I still wanted to make sure that they learned in a way that felt good to them. So I really, I didn't want the effectiveness of the lesson to go from 100% for in-person to like 50%. My goal was, can we get it up to 75%? And
Right.
by the end, I was kind of slinging. Like I got it up to maybe 95% effectiveness
Nice.
online. It just felt great that was the case.
What was the biggest adjustment for you? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut off the rest of your answer.
No, please do, because I'll keep talking.
Okay. So what was the biggest adjustment for you in going to the virtual instruction?
Figuring out the tech side. So I had been doing things with one platform that didn't allow me to screen share. But as soon as I found a platform that allowed me to screen share, then it was all on, because I could use my iPad to I have all my music on my iPad, all their music on my iPad. So I could say, hey, and I could show them what I wanted and they could see it. It was getting parents to understand that it was easier than they thought it could be, because it's really just a computer on a stool next to their piano, or a computer on a stool. It doesn't have to be a setup. But that, I mean, it really adjusted within like a week and a half.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that launched, or that I guess you could say was kind of the impetus of I Am School of Music. And so how has that expanded? It's no longer just you, is it?
No. So actually, you said the impetus. The impetus was at the beginning of August. I'm watching my own 4 kids, and we've been able to do some play dates here and there, but all their regular time with kids is just gone.
Right.
And I was like, I really want to expand my studio. I wonder if we can make a solution that will cover both. Because I need my kids to be seeing some people. Like so we or I should say, my husband and I talked about, like, well, what if we did some virtual group lessons? Wouldn't that be good? And I said, hey, I think I'd also like to bring on a violin teacher, but I want her to do it my way. And that is when things exploded, because I just put a little post out to the school community that I'm in, because my name has some weight here, because people want their kids in with me. And basically the answer is always no. So I'm like, hey, I will take some students, and I've got a violin teacher who will teach for me. And then all of a sudden I'm getting calls, I'm getting people wanting to work with me. I'm getting like teachers from the East Coast. I'm on the West Coast. People from the East Coast calling, like, can I please teach with you? And I'm like, well, you'd have to teach like me. And they're like, yeah, I want to do that. I want to be a more intelligent or emotionally intelligent music teacher. We've got our enrollment goal for this first semester is 150 students, and we're getting there quickly. And our enrollment goal for January is 1,000. So yeah. And the teachers, the really cool thing that has been so affirming for me in this, while it's booming, is that I haven't yet come across anybody who hears what I'm saying and goes, I don't think that's too important. I get a lot of like, I wish I'd had this when I was a kid. I wish like I almost didn't put my kids in lessons because I didn't want them to have that experience, but this made me feel better about it. I've had, so getting the message out there has been so cool to see people love it. So yeah.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations on that early success, and I hope it just continues to take off for you. So, what is one of the things that we talked about last week when we were first conversing was how you want this to kind of segue into a whole certification program where the music instructors that team up with you becoming I think you refer to it as I am certified.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that becomes like a national or even global standard of this is the methodology that this particular musical instructor has subscribed to, and they've mastered it. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, that's two-sided. That's like trying to provide a solution for two sides. The first side from the teacher perspective is you leave college, and like I said, nobody tells you what to do when a kid comes in with emotions.
Right.
So the goal with the certification is actually to give teachers the right resources to make sure that their kids learn well and actually love music and are motivated by their love and not by shame or, frustration. And we can give that to teachers. That's the great thing. I actually just got a call yesterday from a teacher I'm coaching right now, and she was like, I tried it and it worked so great, and thank you so much, which is really fun.
Of course.
Yeah. So, but the other side of it is really for parents, because if you're a parent in America and you want your kid to be in lessons, it is basically a roll of the dice. You don't know how that teacher is going to treat your kids.
Yeah.
And so those are the solutions I'm trying to provide. Teachers who really want to know how to connect with their students, and then giving a resource for parents to say, I know my kid is going to have a good experience because this person has gone through this program.
Yeah.
That's cool. And it's also very, very smart. And you're right. It does accomplish multiple objectives there, because no responsible parent is going to turn their child over for 45 minutes to an hour every other Tuesday when they have no idea who the person is that they're handing them over to or what's going on. So having some kind of a set standard that people can use as more or less a reference guide is definitely a smart thing to do. And I know you and I just met, and you have only recently found out about Thrivenomics, but there was an episode that we published a couple of weeks ago. It was an interview that we did with a gentleman named Jeff Sandifer, who started Acton Academy, and the philosophy that they have towards schooling is very, very much in line with the philosophy you have towards musical instruction. And so it's I'd recommend that you go download that episode and listen to it. And if you want to connect with Jeff, because these are the kinds of things that they look for as solutions to implement into their school. And I have a real good relationship with him, and I've known them since they started it. But if you want to connect with them, I can put you in touch with them. But go listen to that episode. I think you'd enjoy that.
Yeah, I would love that. You're at the front end of everything, huh, James?
Try. We try to stay on the cutting edge. We're not just a mortgage company.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
But anyway, so as we kind of wrap things up here, what are some of the best ways for folks to find out about you? I know you got a brand new website that you're very, very happy about, very proud of. And so what's the URL for that?
It's it's pretty easy. It's I am, as in I am a musician, I am confident. I am schoolofmusic.com. And there's
schoolofmusic.com.
Yeah,
right.
And it's still it is up and running, and we are excited about it, but there's going to be a lot on there. There's going to be some blogs of resources. If you sign up through there, you actually get a link to an interview with me. So if your kids sign up, I'll meet them, and we'll talk about how do we get your kid the best kind of instruction for them. That's every person who signs up gets that. And
that's cool.
Yeah.
What about 47-year-old podcast hosts who want to learn how to play the cello?
Who want to learn how to play the cello?
Yeah.
47-year-old podcast hosts who want to learn how to play the cello have got to wait until January when we get a cello teacher.
We're a very segmented market. I can assure you.
Yeah. Well, you'd be surprised. I love cello.
So do I. I love the cello.
Yeah.
Did you guys see? I don't know. I don't remember her name. But she scored the movie The Joker recently. And I think it's all cello. It is amazing. I love it. She won like a Grammy or something for that.
Oh,
it's amazing. It's all cello.
That's
very
awesome.
cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, I had that was kind of an inside joke with me and Allison. I played the cello when I was younger, Raul.
Oh, really?
And so but gave it up because just because I kind of like you didn't invest in learning how to sing better. I didn't invest in learning how to play the cello better. I loved it. I enjoyed it. I like the sound that it makes. But I gave up playing a long time ago. My parents joked with me that it sounded like there was a dying moose in the back of the house. So I took the hint and moved on to other things that I was a little bit better suited for. So
Yeah.
James, January 2022, we're gonna have you like full on doing your own little album.
Yeah,
fantastic.
He's gonna be scoring these podcasts, man. Just
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. We'll need some new bumper music about that time. I'll see what I can do.
Yeah. That'll be the plan.
Excellent. All right. Well, iamschoolofmusic.com is the website. I know that you're also available with the same handle on Facebook. Are there any other social media platforms that folks can find you?
Not right now, but they're coming.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Are you going to start doing YouTube videos?
Maybe.
Right.
I really haven't. This has all happened really, really fast. So
well, you haven't got it all planned out since the beginning of August. What's wrong with you? What are you doing with your time?
I don't. Sorry, man. Oh Lord, I'm working 70 hours a week getting this thing off. What are you doing with your time? Get out of here.
All right, fair enough.
Podcast, figure it out.
Most entrepreneurs do that. They don't figure it all out as they do it as they go along.
No, and that's one of the things that I admire the most about this is that you're not just hiding behind the curtain of, well, I need to research all of this and I need to get all these things in place first. I mean, you're just stepping out, you're just doing it and learning as you go.
Yeah.
And so I commend you for that, and I think that that's a really, really cool approach to take. And yeah, there's you're probably going to stub your toe here and there. I probably might learn a lesson the hard way, but you know what, you're going to be better for it. And I think that your students and the musical instructors that are teaming up with you, I think that they're all going to be better for it. So I commend you for stepping out there and launching something that's very, very creative.
Yeah.
And you'll probably lead the way for a lot of other folks to try and do the same thing. And maybe they put their own spin on it. Maybe they become part of your organization. So it remains to be seen. But congratulations on your at least initial success, and hope it continues for you.
Thanks. I heard a really smart guy one time say you have to run before you crawl.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who said that?
I don't know.
I think it was some podcast host. Yeah, that did come up in conversation last week. So thanks for reminding me of that. But yeah, well, Allison, it was great chatting with you again. And again, I wish you nothing but continued success. And yeah, hit me up when that cello instructor comes on board with you.
Absolutely.
Right. Sounds good. Well, thanks for tuning in, everybody. Thank you, Raul, for running the board. Appreciate you as always. And we're going to sign off for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you've got suggestions or ideas or thoughts or desires for future podcast episodes or topics you'd like us to cover or people you'd like to see on, just shoot us a note at thriveonomics@thrivemortgage.com, and we'll be happy to look into that. And because we're always looking for great suggestions and interesting folks to talk to, like Allison and all the great guests that we have on here. So have a great rest of your day, and thanks again for listening. Make sure that you hit subscribe so you get notified when the next great podcast drops, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. The title sponsor for Thriveonomics is Thrive Mortgage. Licensed in multiple states across the U.S., Thrive Mortgage employs the best professionals, equipped with leading technology and the most efficient process to deliver a legendary lending experience. For more information about how we can serve you, or to find a local Thrive Mortgage professional in your area, please visit us at thrivemortgage.com. You can also contact us directly via email at thriveonomics@thrivemortgage.com. Thrive Mortgage is an equal housing lender, NMLS ID 268552.